least it's afternoon here when we're recording this. I'm Beth Shibley, and I'm with Sunflower House Aging Matters in Brevard, and this is the latest of our caregiver conversations. And today I've got Steve DeMari from CaptionCall with me. And hi, Steve.
Hi.
You're sitting up north right now, and I'm down here in Brevard County, Florida. But you get Brevard County, Florida, but you got some good weather today, which is great.
60 degrees Chicago, November is a good
take
day.
it and run like heck. So today we're going to be talking about well, tell me what we're going to be talking about.
We're going to be talking about the impact of captions for folks with hearing loss, whether those captions are via television or a telephone, but in general, how captions can help support people with hearing loss.
Terrific. Thanks so much for joining us today, Steve.
Great to be here. So I'll share my screen.
Fabulous.
And we should be good there.
Yep, we're good.
Okay, so as Beth said, I'm Steve DeMari with CaptionCall. I'm an audiologist. I've been in the industry for 30 years in many different capacities. I started out actually growing up with a hearing impaired sister. My sister was deaf, so I grew up in a deaf community for a lot of our engagements with my sister. And then that was part of the impetus for me to go to school for audiology and communication disorders. So, but a lot of different capacities, started in the government, worked in some private practices, clinical practices, hearing aid manufacturers for the last several years, actually many years, 20 something years in the hearing aid manufacturing side, and then also with the managed care side for a large insurance company, and most recently now joining CaptionCall as their Director of Business Development and Education. So I'm very excited to be with CaptionCall. It's a great company, great group of people. But let's talk a little bit about hearing loss. So Beth, do you want me to just run into some stats, or do you have a specific question?
No, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. So
I'll interrupt you appropriately.
Sounds good. So these data are always changing pretty quickly. Right now, we're at about 17% of the American population, adults, suffer from hearing loss. That's 29 million, almost 30 million people, actually. It's the third most chronic condition behind hypertension and arthritis. Nearly twice as many men have hearing loss as women. A lot of the hearing loss can be attributed to workplace noise in some cases. And then obviously as we get older, the chance for hearing loss continues to increase. Part of this also, when you look at that number of 16.8% of Americans have a hearing problem, not many of those folks are being detected or getting treatment for those hearing problems, which leads to exacerbating this entire situation, because people don't do anything about their hearing like they do more so for their vision.
Mm-hmm. Right. But you're right. And it's just amazing to me that almost 17% of adults, I mean, that's just crazy. That means mostly, under normal circumstances, sitting, I work with 100 people, chances are, almost 18 of them are going to be suffering from some sort of hearing loss. And you just don't think about it in terms of that,
That's right.
That's more than, that's just huge.
Yes, it has become a stigma, and unfortunately, by not helping themselves in getting tested and trying to find a solution, it can lead to functional decline, depression, negative physical, social, and cognitive impact, economic impact, just very severe emotional consequences for folks that don't do anything about their hearing. And it's the awareness. Nobody really thinks about those implications of the comorbidities that are involved with hearing loss and other health problems. And so let's maybe dive into that a little bit here. There's a little bit of there's been more research lately with regard to the hidden impacts of hearing loss. Since 1980, the percentage of American adults who say they're lonely has doubled from 20% to 40%. Um, some of this is because of a hearing loss, and they don't seek that social connection and interaction as much because they're having a problem hearing. And
Mhm.
at some point during a conversation, if they just can't stay with it, they just check out. And
Mhm.
that has an emotional impact. It affects sleep patterns. You can affect your immune system. Risk of heart disease and stroke can increase by up to 29 to 32%. And just the overall loneliness can accelerate the cognitive decline. It's an atrophy effect. You don't use it, you lose it. And
Right.
this is a simple solution. You notice a hearing loss, or someone in your family notices that you have a problem. There are simple evaluations and many sources of treatments and devices out there to help people with hearing loss.
Yeah, that's just, yeah, I absolutely understand that, I mean, especially, in the world of COVID. And I think we'll probably talk about that a little later on. But, I just think about how important it is to be able to talk to people and hear people. Um,
Correct.
it's
Yes.
just
And
crazy.
yep, you're right. And again, it's trying to have alleviate this these statistics. Adults over the age of 50 with untreated hearing loss are more likely to report depression, anxiety, and less likely to participate in organized social activities compared to those folks that are actually have a solution, whether it's a hearing aid or some type of listening device to help them hear better. And so with that said, let's jump into a little bit about one of the solutions we can talk about today, and it's captions. Why captions? And in the most obvious spot where you've probably seen captions, and I would think and hope that most people know that their television can provide captions for all programming. It's there as a free feature of your television. And let's look back at how this started. If you all remember Julia Child, she's got a very interesting life, which we could go off on a tangent and talk about that. But
Oh, wouldn't
I
you? Like,
grew up with her, watching her on PBS. Did you, Beth?
yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It was, yes, I just remember her. One of my favorite movies more recently about it was Julie and Julia. I don't know if you've seen it, where it kind of
No.
delves into it. You should watch it because it's a fascinating, in-depth look at Julia Childs, and she led a fascinating
Yeah,
life during World War II.
he did.
Um, and she was many years in France, and she
Yep.
was a pretty complex woman.
Yes. Yes, a joy to watch. I mean, even as a
Oh,
kid, I was a kid,
absolutely.
and to have someone engage you as a child, watching a chef,
Mhm.
it says a lot about her. But to really talk about captioning and how it started with Julia Child's program, the nation's first captioning agency, Caption Center. It was founded in 1972 by WGBH out of Boston, and it introduced captioning of rebroadcasts of Julia Child's show, The French Chef. And then they also started doing rebroadcasts of the ABC News program, in an effort to make television more accessible to those folks with hearing loss, especially those that are deaf, hard of hearing, or more profound losses. So
Mhm.
that's where it started. And from there, in 1990, and if you think about the amount of time here, but
Yeah,
1972 is when Caption started, and now here we're talking 1990, before any federal regulations came into play, where the Television Decoder Circuitry Act was passed.
yeah.
That
It's like 18 years.
Yes,
It's almost
long,
2 decades worth
long
where
time.
between before they finally said, okay, yeah, everybody needs to do this.
That's right. As you can see there, that was instituted in 1990 for televisions 13 inches or larger. And so let's talk a little bit about captions in general and how captions can improve speech understanding using closed captioning on a television and or telephone. The first study where we have some good data are the benefits of hearing aids and closed captioning for television viewing by older adults with hearing loss. So this is using captioning, but also using hearing aids and comparing those to listening options for how well can people understand television while they're watching TV programs. So the objective here is just to find out what's the ability to understand televised speech that can be compromised by hearing loss. So two assistive devices, we'll call them assistive devices, but hearing aids are pretty common these days. Again, we'll get into some of the statistics there about how many people actually get a hearing aid. And then closed captioning, which is what we just introduced. And again, hearing aids you're going to have to purchase, but closed captions are available free, no charge feature on your television. The primary purpose is to investigate, to determine if older hearing impaired adults showed improvement using these two devices. And then a secondary purpose was to examine the frequency of hearing aid and caption call use among the sample of people within the study. So there are some specific stimuli that were presented in the study. What they did was they provided parts of sentences from a couple of TV programs, ABC World News Tonight, Jeopardy, and The West Wing. And they presented 4 lists of 10 sentences, and they recorded each of the 3 shows, yielding about 120 scoreable sentences. And these sentences contained at least 4 content words that could be used for scoring. And so the participants exhibited better speech recognition scores in conditions with closed caption than those without. And that's the gist of the study is, did people understand what was being said and what the content of the program was better with captions or without?
There was some, I was really fascinated to see the television programs that they picked, because I think each one of them, I think we talked about it when we were going over when we were practicing for this, but West Wing, anybody that's watched anything that Aaron Sorkin has done, just, you know, the cadence and the speed. And the same thing actually is true somewhat with Alex Trebek and Jeopardy. It clips right along. It's easy to miss stuff. And also with the news. So I think those were very intentional choices.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think also it's interesting is the beauty of Jeopardy was, you know, they always put the question and the answer up on the screen. So in addition to your captions, at least that game show really did keep, you could see why certain people with hearing loss probably really gravitated to the show Jeopardy. The other interesting variable that came out of this was the use of personal hearing aids didn't necessarily significantly improve the recognition of the televised speech in an aided condition all by itself. However, you certainly want to encourage the use of hearing aids and certainly partner with the amplification in all situations along with captions, because that added benefit really can make the difference for this condition. So if you look at the actual bottom line result, the condition effect was similar across all those 3 programs. So if you compare those 3 programs, most of the participants, 73%, regularly wore their hearing aids while watching television. However, few of them, only 13%, ever used captions. So it tells me that is there a lack of awareness that captions exist? Or that they aren't aware of how well captions may certainly support them in watching and understanding a television program. And so that's where this presentation that we're doing today is very important. And I think in general, beginning to yell this off a mountain that captions are out there for you, especially on your television.
It is like the best kept secret, I think, sometimes.
Yeah, agree. So awareness is always, you know, one of those things that it takes time, but certainly making not only the professional community aware and your medical providers and your audiologists, but also from a consumer side of things via social networks and other modes to make them aware. I would think most people know when they get their TV and they see their remote control. Certainly, there's a lot of different brands of TV and remotes, but the remote control in many cases will have a captioning, a CC, a closed captioning button on there, or there might be an instruction on the TV guide section of their TV, depending on their cable provider, for easy access to captions. And you and I talked about that, how the remote controls can be very complicated, and maybe for some folks it's just better to maybe tape it off and just have certain buttons available, or at least have the captioning button programmed and available to have easy access. So just concluding, so on average, the use of closed captioning while television improves speech understanding. And that's the bottom line here, is that captioning has a positive impact when watching television. And that's really the message we want to take away here.
Absolutely. My mom wears hearing aids, and when she comes over the house and we're watching television, even though we keep the speaker right near her and she's wearing her hearing aids, she still struggles to hear the words. And sometimes, depending on what it is we're watching, I think some things are easier than others, but if it's an action adventure thing, or if there's something that's got music in the background, or lots of things blowing up, or noises, I can absolutely see on her face when she's not catching as much as she needs to catch. And the same thing, frankly, is true for me. I don't know how many times I've had to say to Mike, could you back that up, because I didn't get what he said.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of TVs these days. The technology these days. You can rewind, you can pause. The captions are much easier to read on the screen. You're right. We've talked about our moms. My mom's 97, and I go to her apartment, and she does have hearing aids, but her TV's still up loud, but the captions are there too. And it certainly helps her enjoy her programming and keeps her engaged, because that is one of the most common leisure activities that an older population will be engaged in.
Right.
So very important, and think about it too. It's a no-cost option on your television, so use it. And I might have a little bit of a hearing loss. My wife and I watch some different programming together, but a lot of it too, we watch some British TV and sometimes even accents. So having the captions on there, even though you can hear it, sometimes you can't understand it. So, and make a difference.
Yeah.
So study number 2 now goes from television to the importance of captions for a telephone service in meeting communication needs with people with hearing loss. So it's going to have some very similar results and methods to look at. So the objectives here is to quantify folks that are using the telephone. Can captions help them? The importance of conversing on the phone. This study by Sergei Kochkin, he looked at 19 different scenarios, and one-on-one was the most important scenario, but talking on the telephone was the second most important scenario for people with hearing loss. And you can see there on this graph that telephone is number 2 there. So what they did was they took 14,000 individuals, a very big N, a very big study with varying degrees. They surveyed them out of these 19 different listening scenarios, and communicating on the telephone was rated second most important. So that's 57%, of the people with hearing loss indicated that was very important to them. A large group. Both hearing aid owners and hard of hearing non-hearing aid wearers were presented with a list of 19 of these situations. And so the entire group indicated, so whether they wore hearing aids or not, the 57% of the group indicated telephone was the second most important scenario for them. So the conclusion here was very similar to television. People who are having a hard time listening on the phone, they have a hearing loss, they're at a distinct advantage. when compared to normal hearing people on the telephone. You're also missing visual cues needed for effective communication. If you think about that, a live communication, lip reading, facial expressions, they're not available to the listener. The caption phones are customizable to deliver a speech signal based on the unique needs of the hard of hearing. So depending on the hearing loss, we can adjust the frequency response of that phone to make it best heard by the hearing impaired person, while at the same time, the speech is being captioned on the screen of the phone, so they can read the text and fill in the conversation as they're talking to their loved one or their physician, an emergency service on the other end. So it would offer a very viable support mechanism for talking on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk a little bit about captions in general. So it's the terminology Internet Protocol Caption Telephone Service is really just what it says. It's the service of being able to provide captions to that phone via the internet. Okay. It allows a person with hearing loss who can use his or her own voice, because you have a handset, as you can see there. You're talking, listening, but you can also read the words, whether it's consistently reading the words, or maybe you misheard something. You can then look on the screen to see what that word was that you missed or maybe misinterpreted. So essentially, IPCTS is the captioned service that is available to everyone out there via a few different companies.
Cool.
So, and then just to expand on that, half the people over age 75 have hearing loss, which means many people in that group are going to have trouble using the phone. So even though only 57% said phone was the number 2 reason, everyone uses the telephone. And so creating a means to best be helped by talking on the phone, captions are that support mechanism. It connects them with their friends, their family, and as we said before, the physicians needing to understand what their physician is telling them, an emergency situation. So it's a very important tool in the life of the person with hearing loss that cannot accurately talk on the telephone.
You know, and here's a news flash: the group of people that's getting older, that age group, that over 75, that's just growing in leaps and bounds as the baby boomers enter into that. We're knee deep in the hoopla of that age range. So it's only going to get bigger as the baby boomers age. Speaking as a baby boomer,
Me too. Yep. And the hearing aid companies are well aware of that, and they're gearing a lot of their marketing towards that baby boom generation. And there's a whole other set of information that we can talk about further, Beth, to possibly present also. But I do want to point out that for some individuals, hearing aids could be enough. An amplified phone as itself could be enough. But if you use them together, you're certainly going to provide more of an impact for that person with hearing loss. It can make up enough of a difference for them. So we certainly want folks, again, it's the awareness, get evaluated, call an audiologist, call your physician to find an audiologist and get your hearing evaluated if you have any question about if there's a hearing loss, or if someone in your family or significant other thinks you have a hearing loss. So those are important aspects to remember. Don't take your hearing loss lightly.
Well, the thing is, one of the things that I don't think we've spoken about before, I would happen to be thinking about this morning in preparation for, it's frustrating for those of us who love people who have hearing loss too. So, when we're trying to talk to our grandchildren, or we're trying to, if my kids want to put my grandbabies on the phone, and, hearing, it's frustrating for my kids too if I can't hear what it is they're saying. It's frustrating for me with my mom when I'm trying to talk to her and I know she can't hear what I'm saying over the phone. So, even if we might not think we would need it for ourselves, wouldn't it be wonderful to not have to say, could you say that again? Every
Right.
3 minutes for our kids.
Right, right, and that can get frustrating. But even those little simple things,
Right,
um, like you said, of grandchildren. Not only that, just the independence it
right.
provides those folks, and just being able to live in a less isolated world. It's a very important component. And again, I think that's why you're seeing in the hearing industry, there's more and more information coming out with regard to hearing solutions, which I
Mhm.
think is important. So stay tuned, because I think you'll see some things coming from the federal government here soon as well. So well, we mentioned the word government. So let's talk a little bit about, again, about captions and about this service. Again, as we mentioned before, it was passed in 1990. So the ADA, the Americans with Disability Act, led to the development of this relay caption telephone service, so the IPCTS. And specifically, it's Title IV, if you want to get into the legalities. That
Good to know.
Yeah. So essentially, that means that the service needs to be at a cost no greater than what a person with normal hearing would pay for telephone services.
Oh,
So these need to be made available to the hearing impaired folks that are out there. This is just one part of the technology. There's also telephone relay services that our parent company Sorensen is involved in, and so as far as communication for those with hearing loss, hearing impairment, um, there are many tools out there now for these folks, so they can communicate with the outside world as effectively as someone with normal hearing.
mhm.
And then to expand to the FCC's role, so this is where the federal government, the Federal Communications Commission, has created the ability of this pathway of funding. And so if you've ever looked on your phone bill, all of our phone bills have a telecommunications charge at the bottom of our bill. It might be $1.30 or whatever it is, or 65 cents. There's a range of charges. But those charges are passed on to the customers and then collected by the FCC. And that's
Mhm.
how the phone companies that provide caption telephone service, or the telecommunications companies, the captioning services companies, are reimbursed per minute of use for captions that are delivered. So we must meet very strict standards by the federal government. So they look at us every single day and measure um, our results and success on a daily basis, or we don't get paid. So
Mhm.
unless they're using captions, we don't get paid. With that said, it's very important to know that the user of the phone has the ability to turn captions on and off. So if they
Mhm.
want to use captions and they think there's a difficulty, they can turn them on. If they don't, they can easily turn them off. And that's just part of the service, and we walk them through that.
Mhm.
Let's look a little bit at eligibility, and why patients and why customers in general, the consumer, would benefit in like captions. Again, we'll get into the specific criteria, but again, no cost. There's no cost to them directly. We're all paying
Mhm.
that surcharge. The services of the captions itself, the
Mhm.
telephone that you see there, the
Right.
installation of the phone, the training, which doesn't take much training. It's the same phone number they always use. And then the follow-up support after the fact. We're going to be there from
Mhm.
beginning to end. So while a professional might get involved in the beginning to refer a patient, or they may
Mhm.
self-refer themselves by using our internet um, website, we take the ball as a company, and other companies would do something similar.
Yeah.
But some of the other things that the phone can do, so you can see there's a very big screen to read the captions. But some other things that this phone has that are very important is that handset is very long, so it can reach from your ear to your mouth, because if you do have a hearing aid, that handset needs to be in a specific spot to best hear what's coming through the telephone.
That's
It's
really
also
interesting. That's really interesting, Steve. You wouldn't think about it the physical device needed to be of a certain, but you're right, it modifies, the hearing aid modifies where my mom's ear
Correct.
sits, and where, when she holds a phone up to her ear, it's different. Yeah.
Right. And the important thing is too, depending on how the audiologist has worked with that patient. So if there's a hearing aid involved, it's possible the hearing aid could have what's called a telecoil, an induction coil, and our phones are compatible with those. So if you're in that mode, this phone will communicate via this induction coil, which it removes the extraneous ambient noise and only communicates the sound coming out of the phone. Or you can use it just acoustically with the receiver onto the hearing aid, or if there's no hearing aid being worn, you can use the telephone handset just on the ear, and there's a volume control for the person to adjust the handset volume to hear better. Those are in addition to whatever captions are being used on the screen. Another big feature of this phone is the ability to save messages. So if we look at those, some of those regulations again, we'll go through how that function works, but they're able to save the messages that are coming through there. So maybe there's directions, or maybe there's a prescription, or certain directions they need to follow to get somewhere. Or maybe something that like a grandchild said and they want to save it. There's a save function on the phone. So that's nice to have for the user as well. So hearing aid friendly, Bluetooth. If you have a more sophisticated patient with hearing aids and or a cell phone, there's Bluetooth connectivity with these phones, and that would require a little bit more counseling and training, but certainly there for those more sophisticated patients that want to use that feature. So you can use this on the go, essentially. You could get captions and phone calls through your cell phone via this telephone. So that's a
very cool.
incredible
Yeah, my
feature.
mom has an iPhone, and that would be very cool.
Yep. So iPhone, even on an iPad, and very soon Android compatible, imminently. And again, just to reiterate, captions, as you see there, they can be turned on or off by the consumer. We talked about this a little bit already. So approximately 55% of hearing aid owners are benefiting from hearing aids when using the phone. Again, we're just trying to point out that hearing aids are very important, but depending on how their hearing aids are connected to the phone, whether it's Bluetooth or acoustically, there are some complications there for some users, and that having captions provides additional support and benefit. So captioning, and specifically with CaptionCall, the service allows users to activate captions when they need it to understand the conversation and turn it off if captions aren't needed. So again, the phone that they have at home, you would replace it with the caption phone that we install to give you all of these services.
Although I do remember that phone, that picture of that phone right there. You know, for all of my children and my grandchildren that think it takes too long to dial a phone, they never had to deal with the.
Right. Yeah. Push it. How fast can you dial? Yeah. I remember that. Yep.
Yep.
And another thing to remember is, so an individual with hearing loss might be able to succeed with some phone calls and struggle with others. So again, having that ability to use captions when they want to is important. It's every conversation is going to be unique, and every connection too, depending on who's calling, where they're calling from, what kind of noise is going on around them as well as around you, creates challenging situations very possibly. Where's my mouse? There we are. So again, just to reiterate, amplification may not be enough. So word recognition, so hearing and ability to understand speech are different things. However, the individual with hearing loss may have a difficult time discerning what's being said, as we just said, with background noise, in the presence of background noise, cognitive strain, things of that nature. Listening effort comes into play. It's very difficult to strain and listen if you have a hearing loss, if you're not using a hearing aid. So again, get amplification, get some of those other devices. They have devices for televisions even that you can present the signal from the TV to a hearing aid or from the TV to a headset. in addition to captions. Same here with the telephone. Captions are a support mechanism to supplant also the additional devices that they're using. So a combination of audio, visual is going to provide much more benefit for the person with hearing loss.
Yeah.
And again, we talked about, comorbidities. We've also talked about, well, so what's actually happening? Well, by providing the audio and visual together, you're helping with comprehension, memory, understanding, recall. So these cognitive demands are made a little bit easier. The neural system combines these speech and text together, so it helps you understand and hear and understand that message better. It's just like with one ear versus two. If you cover one eye, it's hard to have depth perception. When you have one ear plugged versus another, it's hard to localize. Two ears, sound comes in and summates in your brain and adds together as one clearer, more robust message. So it's hearing from both ears is important, and hearing the message in addition to hearing the message, but having captions to help you in that audio and visual cortex to understand the message is very important. We've already kind of gone over the phone. Again, this is just some more features of the phone. Again, large display. There's a voice messaging on there if they want it. A pop-up reminder to save the call, so at the end, which was what we talked about. And then also that we are multilingual, and right now Spanish as well as English is available for users. We have a very large Spanish population in this country, and so we have a solution for those Spanish speakers as well.
Yeah, and for those folks that are interested specifically in the brand of the Caption Call, which is a company that Steve works for, at the end of this, you're going to have your contact information, so people can reach out to you to be able to speak more specifically also about, because we are going to go through some of the stuff for your specific devices that Caption Call presents, but like for this specific phone, some of the stuff is very, very specific to the features that Caption Call offers, and you might not be able to get it from other companies.
Yeah, thanks, Beth. And again, I know we've probably talked about some of these statistics, but it's good to hear things more than once sometimes. Just remember that out of the 40 to 48 million Americans with hearing loss, 1% are actually using a captioning service.
Is that not crazy?
Is it awareness? Is it what is the reason for that? And that's where we as a company and as an industry, hearing impairment industry, whether it's hearing aid companies, captioning phone companies, other accessories and device companies. There's a lot of hearing aid companies out there. There are really mainly 6 big hearing aid manufacturers, which we'll talk about in a second, but it's really our job and even helping the message across to the AMA, the American Medical Association, and when they're talking to their patients to bring up the issues of hearing in addition to other health problems. So because it is very important. 25% of non-hearing aid owners indicated poor utility on the phone. So whether they have a hearing aid or not, again, having some type of feature or mechanism to help hear on the phone is very important. And that's what the message we're trying to get out.
You know, one of the things that I keep thinking about over and over when we've discussed these things is this is really an in addition to, not an instead of.
Correct.
You know, this is something to help more. And,
correct.
You know, so just for us to keep in our heads, you know, it doesn't mean you don't use your hearing aid, or it doesn't mean you can't have other things that help you. This is just something additional to help. And I really like the idea, and I don't know how I missed it before, that you're right. For those folks that are visual learners, having it captioned, it imprints in a different part, physically, it imprints in a different part of your brain.
Correct.
It's a different way that you be able to hold that memory.
Correct. Yep. And I'll just bring my 97-year-old mom into it again. I'm in Chicago. She's in Syracuse, New York. I call her a couple times a week. and her hearing has gotten worse as she's gotten older. She wears hearing aids, and hearing aids can provide awareness and understanding, and certainly a lot of benefit. She does use them most of the time on the phone. Sometimes she might not have them in, the phone rings. She's going to
Right.
be without her hearing aid when she answers the phone. And luckily for the handset, it has a volume control. And then she can turn captions on or off as needed. But when she does
Mhm.
have them on, I know my conversation, there might be a quick little latency there for her to catch the word, but she does. And it does make our conversation more streamlined and less frustrating for her to have
Mhm.
a conversation, an
Right.
enjoyable conversation, because I've been on the other side before she had captions, and it was a struggle.
Right.
Um, it's a night and day difference from when she uses it from when she doesn't. So let's talk about some of the compatibilities. If you do have your loved one or the person you're taking care of does wear hearing aids, um, these are just hearing aid companies. We have a compatibility with all of the major brands of hearing aids. Um,
Mhm.
I said the big six. It's actually, that's fine. It's the big five actually now, because they like to buy each other out. So these are the five big hearing aid brands that are out there that you might see most often. And then there's some minor brands within these, but these are the parent companies. And we're compatible with all of them with regard to Bluetooth technology and that connectivity that we talked about. So if you do have a sophisticated listener with an iPad, an iPhone, or eventually the Android, our installation process will help you or help the consumer, the patient, connect that device to the caption call phone to be able to get that signal remotely to their cell phone. So for those folks that are on their go, maybe they're out in the yard, maybe they're just outside, nearby. They don't have to necessarily be away from home. It could just be in another part of the house or another part of the yard. You can have
Mhm.
this connectivity wirelessly to your cell phone. And these are just some of the features that they can do. So if you do have someone that uses the phone, I know a lot of times cell phones are purchased for parents that are, from their children are usually maybe getting their parent a phone to use. My mom has one, but it's a flip phone, so
Mhm.
we haven't gotten her to this point yet. But there are folks, and I've seen them in the elderly population that are very tech savvy.
Yeah.
Um, so if you do have an iPhone like this, there are some great features with you download our app. We have connectivity, and then they can just be on the go and still get captions on their cell phone.
So here's a question that I've gotten. I know this is one that we haven't talked about before. So I'm just so it's okay if you don't necessarily know the answer. We can get back to me later with it. But if I have a caption call phone at home and I also have an iPhone and it's two different phone numbers, how does you can move? Is it almost like a call forwarding onto the iPhone?
Yes.
How does it work?
Yes, it is. It's a call forwarding. You don't have to learn or give any new numbers out to anyone. They're always
Uh-huh.
going to call the same number. We may have to use a separate number in the programming of your cell phone to connect it to our caption call phone, but
Uh-huh.
visible to you and to your friends and family. It's just a number that's used as a reference. So yes, so that when they call your cell phone, it goes through our caption call phone, provides the technology through the app on your cell phone. So while there might be a separate phone number, it's invisible to you guys. You don't have to learn any new phone numbers.
And does it works both ways? So if they call the caption call, it would show up on your cell phone. If they call the cell phone, it would show up in the caption call.
Yes, I believe that is the case, and I can get you a specific scenario of how that works, so we can
That's
better
very cool,
explain
Steve.
it to the folks that want that resource.
Yeah.
This is a 30,000-foot slide here, but I can give you some very
Yeah.
specific details on cell phone and wireless connectivity and how that works specifically. Some screenshots.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And by the same token, while we're talking about different phones, there also is an option for folks that, depending on the layout of their home, how mobile they might be, they are able to receive more than one caption call phone as part of their need. So
Oh,
again, Perhaps they're just immobile. Maybe they're in a bedroom more often than they are in a living room, but maybe they are in those two different spots. You can have two phones within the same house, same phone number. It works the same way as a normal phone would. So we do have that ability to provide that service.
Would folks mostly they need to qualify for that somehow though, with the mobility issue?
Well, yeah, and it's not very strict. Really, the bottom line for candidacy is hearing loss
Mm-hmm.
and ability to need some support talking on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
So if they have an issue where they say, hey, this is my scenario physically, or how my house is set up, or maybe I'm in a skilled center, nursing center that wants to use this type of phone and there's different rooms, they just let us know what that is, and
Yeah.
our account manager will make sure that problem is taken care of. Yeah.
Cool.
And so that's a good lead in. So this is, I'm talking from Caption Call perspective.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how everyone else works, but again, so if there's candidacy and there's a referral and there's a person that needs the captioning service, there's no cost. Okay, that's just something important to remember. People sometimes can get skeptical. It's like, what do you mean no cost? And there's might be a hidden cost or a tax or something of that nature. There is no cost whatsoever to your patient or consumer's phone.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's all paid for through a federal regulation, the ADA, and funds are collected by the government from everyone in the country that pays for this service. The no-cost installation, which we'll talk a little bit about the COVID era in a second too, but we will deliver the service, deliver the actual phone, install the phone. We will train you on the phone, even though it's just a telephone.
Right.
There are a few extra features,
Right.
which we talked about, that would be good to learn and understand. So they'll get some hands-on, and if they have any questions, certainly they can ask them then or even afterwards. We will provide customer support for as long as they need it. We're always here. And so that's, as we say here, it's 100% satisfaction. So they don't like it, there's something that they didn't expect, or feel it's too difficult, which I can tell you, I've seen it in use, and my 97-year-old mom can use it, but they can cancel at any time. So there's no obligations here. But it is a fantastic service, and I would suspect once the awareness is created here, I think more people will take advantage of it, for those folks with hearing loss and that have difficulty communicating on the phone. And just so you kind of understand from the support side of things, we have a very large system of support. We have several thousand captioning agents throughout the country in 11 different captioning locations throughout the country, in addition to Puerto Rico. And like we discussed earlier, we are capable of handling English and Spanish. Mm-hmm. So there's a huge support mechanism out there for support for the folks that are using our services.
Would this particularly be advantageous for snowbirds, Steve? Is there an advantage to going with a company that's across the United States if they possibly have a home in Minnesota and one in Florida?
It doesn't matter where you're located.
Okay.
If they're in New York, they get their services in New York. If they also are snowbirds, they can get their phone down in Florida as well and have that service in either state. Our captioning centers and captioning agents are nationwide. So right. It's on a queue basis. So when they call in, there's always going to be somebody available, regardless of where they're located. And then specifically to your point, if they're a snowbird, they're able to have these phones in both of their homes or both of their locations.
You go with CaptionCall on either end. It doesn't matter.
That's right. And that's another good point is to use this service and technology and this telephone, the person on the other end doesn't need to have one of these phones.
Right. I
call my mother from my normal phone to her Caption Call phone. Mm-hmm. So she uses her Caption Call service to receive my call. Right. So I just want to make sure that that's clear too, that this phone is just for the hearing impaired. This service is just for the hearing impaired person. to receive that signal from the person that's calling them. Okay. We talked about a little bit about the delivery mechanism. Certainly COVID it throws a little bit of a curveball into how business is being done these days. I mean, everyone's
everywhere
Yeah.
for everyone.
Right. Everyone's using the word the new normal.
Yeah.
So you take all those adjectives, and yes, we're all in the same boat.
Yep.
So if for some reason, especially during now, while there are some spikes, there are states that have raised their phases to a more concerned level of engagement. We can do self-guided installs over the phone. So we can guide the user, or maybe the user has a significant other, a child, a friend that can be there with them to help them. Certainly that can be arranged. As soon as the referral is made, our account manager will reach out and create an appointment, however that appointment wants to be handled, whether it's live or via self-guided over the phone. So we will have that. We do have that mechanism available so people can feel safe. We are masked up. We are gloved up. We are essential employees. So we handle this very seriously. And we are very careful when we are doing our installs live, if that's how the particular person would like us to provide the service. So we don't take anything lightly during this pandemic.
Good to know.
So as you see there, we've got the protective equipment, social distancing, and so we do reinforce all of that during our installs. So let's talk a little bit about, we briefly discussed, well, how does it work? How does this thing work? You call me, I'm talking to my mom. How is the captioning ending up on her phone? What's the mechanism? So essentially, I make a call to my mother, let's say. So I'm that phone user up there on the top left. I call my mom. She's the captioned text person over there. And when I start talking, the captioning agent is connected to our call. And we follow strict HIPAA regulations. We do not record phone calls.
So here's my question. So a live captioning agent, that's a flesh and blood person.
Correct.
Is listening to the person who's talking.
That's correct. You don't know they're there. They don't say hi to you. They don't talk to you. They are just on the line.
Right.
You can't hear them. They cannot talk to you. Okay. All they're doing is hearing you, the speaker.
Right.
They have a computer, and they are trained. They're very specifically trained to talk in a very specific, trained, enunciated way to provide the best clarity of speech into their computer. So they're doing it via a microphone, and there's Dragon software, speech recognition software on their computer that interprets those words. So as you talk, I repeat it. My computer then spits out those words electronically onto the screen of the captioning agent. The captioning agent, within 2 seconds, can make any adjustments to the conversation to correct it if needed. Most of the time it's not needed. Usually it might just be punctuation or something of that nature. And then split second later, those captions are ending up on that caption phone that the listener, the hearing impaired listener, is listening on and reading the text from. So there might be a 2 to 4 second delay from when you say the word to when that word ends up on the screen of the listener that has the hearing loss. So when I say something complicated to my mother, she'll hear me and she'll say, okay, what was that? Oh, wait, hold on a second. And then within a couple seconds, she sees it on her screen. It's like, oh, okay, I understand. And so that's how the conversation goes. Okay, so that captioning agent is always there right to the end of the phone call.
That's really interesting, and it's got to be such a skill set, Steve.
It is a skill set.
I just know that even when I'm using like my voice to text on my phone, because I have an iPhone and I can use voice to text if I want to do hands-free, if I'm driving somewhere, sometimes Siri doesn't get it right, and it can be pretty funny what shows up as the text. Considering what it is they think I'm saying. So
Absolutely. And speech recognition software is getting better.
It is. It's not there
But
yet.
but having the combination of technology and human involvement certainly helps us deliver that most accurate caption possible and as
Mhm.
quickly as possible. So I've sat in on the calls back at our home office with a captioning agent, and it was intriguing to watch, and they're very
Yeah.
well trained. But I want to enforce the fact that there's strict HIPAA privacy regulations. No conversations are recorded. The conversation goes nowhere else. It stays right there. So want people to feel confident in that, because that is the truth.
And again, because you're FCC regulated and there's so much government regulations, that's just never
Yeah,
going to go anywhere,
very tight regulation. The federal
whatever people
government.
feel like it, as far as government regulations,
Yeah.
it's nice to know that somebody is actually out there saying, yeah, no, that's not going to happen.
Yes, they're auditing us, and we're abiding by everything we need to, or we don't receive our funds.
Right,
So
right.
if we don't meet certain criteria, we don't receive our funding. So obviously, it's a business, and we're running a business. And unfortunately, we have this government program. That's a very important government program. And again, eligibility, we do want to be clear that for someone to receive captioning service, IPCTS service, they need to have a hearing loss that necessitates the use of a captioned telephone service. So we're just not handing these out willy-nilly just because someone thinks it's cool or it's cool technology. It's very specific to people with hearing loss and who cannot talk and understand on the phone, cannot understand speech over the phone clear enough, where this will help them better understand. Okay, that's very specific to us, especially. We want to be very specific and strict there because, again, we're following federal regulations.
Right.
And this just kind of delves into, again, some of those specifics. What are some of the scenarios that might make you say hearing loss and difficulty? So do they have a difficulty understanding on the phone right now? Do they have, are they asking people to repeat themselves? Are other people complaining that, when I talk to you on the phone, you don't hear a word I say, or you're answering me incorrectly? It might be a significant other that's saying, yeah, we're talking, but you're not answering me correctly, or you're just saying
Right.
yes or no, and you're not engaged in the conversation. Or maybe at some point that hearing impaired person may just ignore using the phone altogether, and that's when you end up in a bad place.
Right.
So every individual who has difficulty using the phone effectively because of their hearing loss, number one, should be evaluated. If that evaluation shows that the patient needs captioning to use the phone effectively, then they should be considered as a referral source for this service. And that they may benefit from captions on the phone based on that evaluation. So if they have had an evaluation and have a hearing test, that could be plenty right there. And if they never have had a hearing test, then again, you and I have talked about earlier today is if you have questions about your hearing, call an audiologist, call your hearing care provider, and get a hearing test. Hearing tests are typically covered by most insurances, the hearing test. You should at least get a hearing test. And if you do have a hearing problem, I would suggest annually get a baseline, and then annually have a reevaluation once a year just to make sure your hearing hasn't changed.
You talk to your PCP. They can make the referrals to anybody that needs to, next time you're at the doctor, folks,
That's correct. That's right. And that's another good segue, Beth. So these are some of your professionals that you could be engaging with. Your audiologist, your PCP, all of these folks can help you gain access to caption services. Now, with that said, we do want to have a professional send us a referral, very possibly, if that person needs support. But those folks now can do a self-referral, which is available on the CaptionCall website. So if a loved one or the person themselves asks about it, there is a method for them to go on a website, fill out the information, answer the questions about hearing loss and difficulty, and we can arrange a caption telephone service for that person. But definitely engage your caregivers. And then specifically, like we just said, and those steps are very simple. You just submit a certification form online, whether it's the self-certifying person, whether it's a loved one, whether it's their caregiver. That's the only step that initiates the entire process. They just need to fill out the form, get it to us, and then we take it from there. And you can either do it online, email it to us, fax it to us. Again, no cost for this. And then we just contact you, create that appointment, whether it's live or an appointment to do a self-guided tour over the phone. We'll arrange everything. So really that first step is just the initial, here's the certification form. We take the ball from there.
Very cool.
Very easy process. Some folks might be asking, because I think they've heard this in the beginning and we keep using the word internet. So they think, well, I have to have the internet. I have to have an email address. I have to have, access to websites. Some people are tech savvy, some aren't. Right. I would guess a lot of people have internet. A lot of people do not. That is fine. No internet, no problem. We can provide captions through our caption phone where there is no internet. So it allows us to deliver captions to you without the need for internet service. We provide that connectivity through our phone that allows us to deliver captions. Okay, it's not giving the internet to anyone. It's not providing them access to the internet or website. It's just giving us access to provide our captions via a internet type of service that we have.
A wireless signal, but it must be within the phone itself.
It's in our phone. Yep, it's very specific.
I'm thinking that when my husband and I had a vacation home several years ago in Florida prior to our moving here permanently, and we did not have internet on our phone, but we did have a security system. So that security system had it had a thing where it would send a wireless signal. It couldn't be used for anything else. It wasn't like I could get on and watch HBO on TV, but I could. But it was sending a signal with no other internet available. So that's I'm assuming it's the same sort of idea.
It is. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool.
And then again, that's federally regulated. So we're being watched at all times, and so we follow the rules, which is very important. And we're the number one service out there for a reason, is because we are very concerned and serious about how we implement our service, and we take it very seriously. So CaptionCall is top of their game. I've been here just for a few months, but like I said, I've been in the industry for a long time, and I'm very impressed with the people and the services that I've seen here at this company. It's been incredible. And with that said, if it's important to you, and I think sometimes some of these scores can be important, is that something called Net Promoter Score, and you've probably heard of this, Beth. A lot of companies have to we have to provide fundamental feedback to these surveys, and then we're measured based on customer feedback. And so this is just a quick short list of net promoter scores and how we kind of fall into place with some other companies out there that may or may not impress you, but you can see the different companies there and their net promoter scores and how we fall at 74. And we've grown that from 71 from 2014. So we're tightening up our ship and becoming one of the top-notch companies in the United States. So we take this very seriously. Everyone has detractors, things happen, and we just want to make sure that we just keep working to get better. And that's really what we want to do, is we want to get better. We don't necessarily want to be the biggest, but we want to be the best.
That works.
And that kind of leads me into just our mission statement, and that's helping people with hearing loss stay socially connected for a longer, happier, healthier life. There's some other notes here to read if we want to, but essentially, that's our message, is just providing this service is a very important service for people with hearing loss, whether they wear hearing aids or not. Even people with hearing aids benefit from this service. So it's a very important concept to know, is that this service provides connection between the person with hearing loss to their loved ones, to family, friends, caregivers, emergency services. So a very important service. And then here are some contact, and you'll have this presentation as well, Beth. But
Yep.
there's our online certification URL. They can also email our support folks, and someone will respond to them. We also have a toll-free number that can be used. And then my information specifically, I've worked with your friend Rick.
Uh-huh.
Rich McEwen,
Uh-huh.
who's your outreach manager down there in the Florida area, and he has account managers. So we have a full team of people to help support you down there in Florida. This is me, so you can certainly reach out to me. I am in business development, and I'll include my entire team to help support you for this resource, for your caregivers, for end users in any way, shape, or form. So whatever you need, feel free to reach out to me via my email or cell phone as you see fit.
All right, so I'm just gonna point out here this little cartoon you got going on here from a wife's point of view, sir.
I know. That's the only one I could find. I couldn't find one that was, spouse.
I gotta say, this is touching on the sleeping on the couch kind of thing.
And you gotta remember, I spent most of my time in the Veterans Affairs medical, so it was usually men that I was working with, and I was like, is there a setting for my wife's voice? And that's why but you're right. You're absolutely right. If you ask my wife, she would say, is there a setting for my husband's voice? And probably more on that side than there is on the other.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
That's a great one.
I have a whole bunch. I'll send them all to you.
That'd be great. That'd be great, Steve. Well, thank you so very much, Steve, for a wonderful, enlightening conversation. You're right. It's about awareness. It's about people just understanding that the service is out there, and why not? I just gotta, and then at the end of the day, why the heck not? It's sort of
right.
Oh gosh, I remember having a conversation. So I'm old enough to remember my grandmother lived next door to us when I was growing up, and my grandmother actually had, believe it or not, a wringer washer. And I remember when she finally put in a regular washing machine for my grandmother, because she just, I don't know what the problem was, but she just fought it tooth and nail, and it was like a revelation. I imagine you probably don't have a lot of people saying, "Oh God, this is horrible." Once they have it, I imagine it probably moves mostly in the direction of, "Wow, I wish I would have done this years ago."
Correct. Absolutely. You don't know what you've got till it's gone, or if you've never experienced it and realized the benefit that it can provide. And I know right now that, if I took it away from my mom, it would have a big impact.
Yeah. So, and CaptionCall is among other many different companies. So people should investigate what works for them. But It seems like CaptionCall is on the top of their game. So I thank you very much, sir, for spending this hour with me. And I thank you, everybody here who's been listening to this later caregiver conversation. Steve, hopefully sometime you or a representative could come into Sunflower House, the Merritt Square Mall in Brevard County, and do a live in-person presentation.
I would love it.
Right up the street from Cocoa Beach, Steve. I don't know if that entices you.
It sounds pretty good. As long as it's December, January, February, I'd be happy to leave the north to come down.
All right, sir. I thank you very much then. Goodbye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.